the Great Jamaican Grift, and
So what are they
this is
doing?
what I've dubbed it anyway. They're planning to ask the UK for about $7 billion in compensation for the Atlantic slave trade for some reason. I mean, I don't know why now. I mean, they've had a very long time to do this, and so it's been estimated that by the Library of Jamaica that 600,000 Africans were shipped to Jamaica between the years 1533 and 1807. So if we actually ended up paying this, if we also spread our repayments over the 274 years, we'd end up paying them about 2.3 million a month in reparations.
So how much did they want in total to be paid, I presume, up front?
I mean, I don't know how they wanted it paid. I don't think they're getting quite that far ahead of themselves, but it was 7 billion roughly.
Right. And who's that money going to go to?
I don't know. They didn't
Well,
specify, funnily enough. Probably the government.
Exactly. I mean, this is always the point. You have this problem with the Americans debating this now. It's like, none of the slaves are alive. They're all gone. And I even ran through, I think we did an episode on this, where it's like, well, if you go for direct descendants, you could make an argument, and you can divide the money between them, and it ends up about, what was it, like 25 grand per descendant you can find, on average. And that could be done. But in the case of Jamaica, what? Like, we're just going to give it to the state, and the state's going to blow it on gender programs, probably.
I mean, it's ridiculous as well, because it's being imposed on people that have never lived under slavery, or even anyone in living memory has. I mean,
if this is valid, we can claim reparations from the Romans.
Yeah, I mean,
Italians.
I want the reparations from Germany and Japan. Why not? I mean, at least they did stuff to my grandparents. I mean, I've got more of a claim than they do to get reparations from us.
Don't you have a right to claim reparations from the English as well with your background?
What?
Because of the castle.
The Scottish ancestry. Yeah, I need reparations from pretty much everyone.
So are you in favour of this? Or?
No, of course not. No, reparations are obviously a terrible idea. I mean,
if it's not to the direct people, then it's...
Yeah. I mean, I'm not necessarily against, paying a fine if someone who is alive has done you wrong, but the ancestors, you don't inherit ancestral guilt. That's not how it works. You're responsible for what you as a person do, not other people. But anyway, they were saying that we are hoping for a reparatory justice in all forms, and that one would expect they are to really ensure that we get justice from injustices to repair the damages that our ancestors experienced. Sorry, it's a bit confusingly written.
I'm sorry,
there.
but that's also an injustice, what you're demanding.
It is, yeah.
Like,
because
you're demanding that the British people, who are currently paying taxes, who have never owned slaves, you steal money from them, because taxation is theft, and then just hand it over to the Jamaican government because people in the past there were slaves. That's also an injustice.
There's also the fact that I've actually traced my family history. No one owned slaves. Why should I have to pay money?
You can get a tax rebate then, can't you?
So yeah, I wanted to go through a little bit of the history to just further reiterate why this is a load of rubbish, because we were probably the country in the world that did the most to end slavery, and we paid a lot of money to do so, just out of a moral crusade more than anything. We were the social justice warriors of the age.
We were the justice warriors, not social justice warriors.
Yeah, actually, yeah, fair enough. So we actually captured Jamaica from the Spanish in 1655. So it wasn't even us that, colonized it. It was the Spanish. But of course, they're not asking for reparations from Spain.
But also, who wants to be owned by Spain? So that's technically liberation. That's what I'm going to call that.
So yeah, in 1807, we prohibited the slave trade in our empire, which Jamaica, of course, was under, and formally abolished the practice in 1834. And in 1837, the slave owners who were in our empire were paid approximately 20 million to free the enslaved people, because I know people have a go at us like, well, you paid the slave owners and not the slaves, but it was the only peaceable resolution here. I mean,
Well,
20 million.
It's not even that. You are literally buying the slaves' freedom. That's what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the government paid all the slave owners, not because they just gives money to them or something. They were like, right, I will buy the slaves off of you. Right, you're all free now. Done. That's essentially what happened there. In which case, the British taxpayer freed all the slaves.
Mm-hmm. And we only finished paying this off in 2015, the actual interest on the loan we took out to pay this. So if you were paying taxes up until 2015, you have contributed to freeing slaves in the UK. And it's as simple as that. So this reparations nonsense, is exactly that. So, just to further hammer the point home, because this is really irritating me, of course, Britain went around the world trying to end slavery. We didn't just end it in our own empire, which was, of course, 25% of the world at the time, but we also pressured former colonies of other European powers, such as the Portuguese colony of Brazil, in which, you know, the entire economy was based on slavery. None of the white people actually worked, and the Africans were the ones that did all of the manual labour. And what we did was we seized all the ships in the Atlantic Ocean and captured a couple of ports until they complied with ending slavery.
The thing in my mind is like, oh, none of the Brazilians worked. Well, they still don't, so it's a joke.
So yeah, there was a recent, well, not necessarily that recent, but in 2011 there was a poll about Jamaicans' attitudes towards the British Empire, and it says the following: Jamaica is getting ready to celebrate 50 years of political independence from the United Kingdom next year. Most Jamaicans are of the view that the country would have been better off had it remained a colony of Britain.
Based. What was the percentage out of interest, you know?
I believe it was,
60%.
Yeah.
60%.
Pollster Bill Johnson, who conducted an island-wide survey among 1,008 people, found that 60% of Jamaicans held the view that the country would have been better off under British rule. That doesn't sound like people who want reparations to me. I don't know.
You can't really have imperial guilt and blame the empire when at the same time being like, yeah, it was better. Like, they should still be ruling us because the country would be better off. It's a bit strange.
Yeah, and it's not like it's a small minority of people either. 60%. That's a decent number. And I mean, of course, there'd be people who were undecided and didn't know as well on top of that. So very few people actually disagreed, I would imagine.
Let's go to Venezuela, poll them about how they feel about, well, these days, being under Spanish governments probably would be better. Should probably say Colombia or Bolivia or something. Like, how do you feel about Spanish governments?
Yeah, definitely not. But yeah, only 17% actually thought that it would be worse off under British rule. So that's a tiny proportion, really. So then Prime Minister Bruce Golding proposed that Jamaica actually removed the Queen as the head of state. This is when it was enormously popular. So big disconnect from the government here, which we might be seeing with this.
Is he a Marxist?
I'm not sure. I think probably...
Makes me sus.
I think they have their own Labour Party, so that might be an explanation.
So
but I didn't look into the Jamaican politics.
People are like UK-based, God save the Queen, and the Prime Minister's like, yeah, also, let's get rid of the monarchy.
Yeah, well, there's also some interesting stuff with the current Prime Minister, which I'll get onto in a second, where it's very confusing, where he's been critical of Queen Elizabeth, but he's also joined a Privy Council as of 4 days ago. So I don't really know how that works. But to read the quote from the former Prime Minister Bruce Golding, transforming Jamaica from a monarchical to a republican state means no disrespect and must not be interpreted this way. I've long believed that if I am to have a queen, it must be a Jamaican queen. I would not wish to see us celebrate 50 years of independence without completing that part of our sovereignization from want of a better world. And I can kind of understand where he's coming from, where he kind of wants a republic.
Why don't you hold a referendum if it's not about insulting?
Yeah.
Forget the insult to the Queen, like the insult to your own people. Like, if they don't want this, why are you doing it?
Well, yeah, it seems very strange that there is such a disconnect between the people who are ruling and the opinions of the public. So
I love the chats being like, I can imagine the Jamaicans being like North FC. I can't do a Jamaican accent, but just being like, love the Queen. Simple as.
So last year there was a renewed effort to remove the Queen as the head of state. It didn't succeed, but this was because Barbados did so, and they wanted to try and carry on that thing. But I just saw you making a face at the headline, which is, God dumped the Queen, Jamaicans ruled by monarchs like Jews under Hitler, says lobbyist.
What?
Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Under Queen Elizabeth II as well.
Wait, so...
She might be a bit German, but that's a bit of a stretch.
She didn't Holocaust the people of Jamaica. I don't know why if that's news to this guy, but...
Yeah, it is obviously ridiculous, but this... anti-colonial campaigner, as he calls himself, Bert Samuel, says It is more than time for our people to experience true independence with the decolonisation of our constitution, the justice system, and also to remove those whose predecessors enslaved us from the pinnacle of our constitutional arrangement. There is no way that a Jewish state would tolerate a descendant of Adolf Hitler being the apex of its constitutional arrangement.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's really not comparable, is it?
Also, the idea that the people there were enslaved by the British means that they were owned by the Spanish before. I'm going to say that the Spanish probably had their slaves there. In which case, that no, actually, the British monarchy is the thing that liberated slavery from existing to not existing. We abolished it by force and paid a lot of money.
Exactly, yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, the current Prime Minister, as of 4 days ago, has joined the Queen's Privy Council, which is a very select group of people. You've got former Prime Ministers, you've got people like Jacob Rees-Mogg.
So have they disestablished the Queen as
No, they actually didn't get around to doing it.
They failed?
Yeah.
Thank God.
And he says, Her Majesty the Queen has been graciously pleased to approve... Oh no, this is her spokesperson, sorry. The Most Honourable Andrew Holness, ON, PC, MP, Prime Minister of Jamaica, be appointed a member of Her Majesty's Most Honourable Privy Council. That doesn't sound very anti-monarchy to me. And he attended a meeting in which he affirmed his loyalty to the Queen. However, in the past, he has said, Jamaicans have embraced the Queen and embraced our legacy in terms of the laws and the system of governments we have, but the deep burning desire we have for full independence still exists. So...
You are independent, and that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, Canada doesn't think, oh, you know what, our head of state is Queen Elizabeth, we've got to rise up.
Wow, I mean, given the statues are being torn down, there's just subsections in there.
Yeah, I suppose. But it's not a widely held view. So, certainly not being said by Trudeau. He's not saying, we need to get rid of the Queen.
Well, I mean, give it time.
Yeah. It's not beyond him, I don't think.
No.
So, obviously, this is a bit of a strange thing. The government's been relatively critical of the Queen, and he's joined the Privy Council. Is this like a thing to do where he's looking for some degree of like bargaining power, where he's like, yeah, we want the reparations, because of course it's his government saying it, but also
because that's the funny transition here between British Empire was good, also governed us well, and we'd like them back, but also give us reparations because you evil. And it's like, no, one of these things is not in line with the other.
Yeah, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
But rather unhelpfully, the UN are somewhat stirring the pot at the minute with the whole reparations thing, which I think is...
Typical.
Yeah, of course, nothing new here. I think this is why Jamaica might be asking for reparations. They've seen, particularly Germany, when they're giving reparations to somewhere in Africa recently, or being asked to, or something along those lines.
Gambia, yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was pretty messed up. Like we looked up me and Carl looked up the guy in charge of the colony, and then is blamed for the first genocide of the 20th century, first of many. And he's an actual nut job, like a full-on comic book villain. Like, it's not just the German name of, like, Heben von Liebentrop or whatever the hell his name was. But he was just talking about, like, yeah, the people have attacked us, therefore all of them must be destroyed. And I was like, what on earth? Like, what on earth is wrong with you? Which is why it's such a disconnect from anything British. Mm-hmm. Like, even when you look at British imperialists, they don't talk like that. Whereas the Germans openly are just like, yeah, kill them all. I was like, right, okay.
Yeah, when the Germans were doing that, we were the ones trying to end slavery, just like, yeah, this is inhumane and unhuman and unchristian.
So you could make an argument for reparations from the Germans, because the Germans are not great political rulers, but the British...
It's still not the current Germans doing it. It's not the people alive now that were doing that in Africa.
That's a fair point.
I mean, as much as it amuses me to talk about reparations from Germany, I don't actually think it's a good idea. I think as a policy in general, no.
I just think the Germans should have to pay reparations for existing. Just, as long as they're Marxist governments, it's their fault.
They love taxes, so I'm sure they'd be happy to pay another one. So this
tax. Like, if your country came up with an ideology, you have to pay a tax for the damage it does.
That's basically Germany and France bankrupt.
Yes.
So this UN human rights chief said in the presentation on human rights, ironically, fully fund and comprehensive processes need to take place on a wide range of reparation measures to address the legacy of slavery, colonial rule, and racial discrimination. And I'm reading from the article here, Bachelet told the council in Geneva that research could not find a single example of a state that has comprehensively reckoned with its past or accounted for its impacts on the lives of the people of African descent today. I mean, how do you determine that? What is the threshold?
There's no metrics whatsoever.
Yeah, it's just like, once you have spent X amount of money, you are now reconciled. You're free.
Yeah, no, because it's original guilt, and you are going to be with it forever, because that's how leftists think.
Yeah, but all of this reparation nonsense is just being imposed from the people like the UN and leftists, where it obviously just doesn't belong in Western society. I don't think anyone should be paying any reparations.
But also, when does it stop? I mean, let's say we don't pay reparations, and then we wait another 100 years. Still owed? 200 years? 1,000 years?
Yeah, how far back in time do we have to go? Do we need reparations from the Italians for their invasion? And
that's a point, but I mean more in the sense of, like, they're saying that Jamaica has this problem because of the legacy of colonialism and whatnot. I have to wonder, well, how does the makeup of Jamaica look? Like, if we get to the point in which, let's say, every white or mixed race person has left Jamaica, and then it's got problems of corruption and, high crime rate as it does, is that still colonialism's fault? I mean, when does it not become colonialism's fault? What do you have to do to stop that from happening?
It's just a way of making excuses for yourself if you're in government, isn't it? It's just like, well, we did all we could, but we've just inherited all of this.
I may have embezzled billions of dollars, but this is Britain's fault.
I may be rich, but now it's all Britain's fault. But anyway, she recommended that countries, this is the UN advisor, create, reinforce and fully fund comprehensive processes with full participation of affected communities to share the truth about what was done and the harms it continues to inflict. Okay.
Name them.
Yeah, exactly.
Name one.
Point to them and say this is directly as a result of British policy that British people today have done.
What are they going to do? We speak English? Like, is that the complaint?
Well, there can be an argument made that in Jamaica they speak their own kind of version. Yeah, like American English. It's not really English, is it?
Simplified.
So the final quote I wanted to read out, because it's the final ridiculous thing, is establishing truth about these legacies and the impact today, and taking steps to address this harm through a wide range of reparation measures is crucial to healing our societies and providing justice for terrible crimes. And she says, measures taken to address the past will transform our future. Yeah, it'll make everyone in Britain very bitter towards people because we're paying for things that we had nothing to do with. And I, for one, definitely will not be paying reparations. I'll be moving if they make us pay this. This is ridiculous. But I would like to think that the government has enough sense.
I'll hold you that.
Yeah. Well, it's probably going to come back to bite me, but I think they have enough sense to say, listen, this has nothing to do with us anymore. Look at what we did as well.
If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 PM UK time on lotuseaters.com.